Hello there and welcome to another video from me, the History Tutor. Today we're looking at the Germany topic for AQA 1890 to 1945 and we're going to be describing skills whilst looking at the Munich Beer Hall Putsch. So in this lesson I'm going to tutor you through how to answer the question correctly to try and get full marks in your AQA GCSE History exam. We're going to be revising our knowledge on the Munich Beer Hall Putsch and also the early Nazis. So if you've got my revision guide, turn to the page around the Nazi Beer Hall Putsch, have a little revision and then come back here and we'll have a quiz. So here's the quiz then. 6 questions to test your knowledge of the early Nazis. Have a look around the page of the revision guide and use that to help you answer these questions. So pause me now and then I'll go to the answers in a moment. Okay, you've got the answers then. So name the first leader of the Nazis. Well, that's Anton Drexler, of course. And important to note that he was not necessarily a nationalist. He was a little bit more of a socialist. This was a backroom pub party discussion group talking about national ideas, of course. With the end of the war, there's a lot of nationalism, but he was worried about socialism and the workers as well. So this is what drew Hitler in, a tempting mix of both the workers and nationalism. What member number was Hitler? So he joined as member 555, which meant he was actually member number 55 because they started the numbering, interestingly, at 500 to make their party look bigger. So that suggests, obviously, that it's a very small party at this stage in Munich. So it lists 3 ideas from the early Nazi manifesto. Well, we have firstly some nationalist ideas like destroying the Treaty of Versailles, regaining the land lost, regaining the lost German people in other countries. We also have the anti-communist value. They are becoming more right-wing under Hitler, so they're anti-communist. Hitler brings in the anti-Semitic and race ideas as well, about a perfect German race. He has social policies, of course, as well. So he wants to nationalise education and develop an idea of love of country. And he sees old people as the heroes of Germany, and they should be rewarded with generous pensions. Number 4, which month and year was the Nazi Beer Hall Putsch? That's November 1923. That's after, of course, Stresemann starts to pay back reparations and ends the passive resistance, and this is why the Nazis are so unhappy. They liked that nationalist policy of standing up to the French and rejecting the Treaty of Versailles and reparations. Question number 5. How does the Beer Hall Putsch and the trial benefit Hitler and Nazis? So, of course, it gave him free publicity. Now, he'd caused a rebellion. There had been some murder. There had been an attempt to take over the army in the area. There had been an idea of a march on Berlin, like Mussolini's march on Rome, for a revolution. There had even been a bank robbery involved to fund the whole thing. So it was a media sensational story. Lots of newspapers and newsreels there in the courtroom. It was packed with people. So Hitler got lots of free publicity and he became a bit of a national celebrity for a short period of time. So even though the Nazis were banned in the next election in 1924, they renamed themselves the National Social Freedom Movement and still gained 14 seats. Even though Hitler and the leaders were in prison, they still were popular enough to gain some seats. Question number 6 is about Hitler made the Nazis democratic. List 2 successes of their policies. Well, their membership increased to 100,000 members. That's a really good example, especially if you tie that into the fact that they had training for their members in how to do speaking skills, set up meetings, how to make leaflets and drop leaflets off people's houses, those sort of things. And of course, they had propaganda campaigns and slogans that were successful. And a good example of this is the Blood and Soil campaign in the late 1920s, building up to the 1928 election, that led to many farmers voting for the Nazis. So let's have a look at our question. We're going to be describing 2 ways the Beer Hall Putsch was a failure for the Nazis. Now, if you look at my other described questions around the Kaiser and also opposition in the war, you'll see more of a success criteria of what to do. But it's quite clear we need to give 2 points supported by evidence. It's very simple, this question. We need to do it in a timely manner. We don't want to spend more than 6 minutes on this. Remembering our rule of marks plus half is the time you have to complete a question if you are doing normal time exams. So let's have a go at this question. So have a think for a moment. What do you think would be some good points to make about ways the Beer Hall Putsch was a failure for the Nazis? Have a think of some ideas. Pause me now and have a think, and then I'll introduce a few ideas to you. Firstly, I think it's worth talking about how Hitler overestimated popularity with the Beer Hall Putsch. Obviously, he was betrayed. People didn't support him. The army didn't rise up. The other national leaders went against him, so he overestimated his importance. And of course, another failure was he was arrested and the Nazis were banned, and he was banned from public speaking. So obviously that meant that he was put in prison and the Nazi Party were banned. So obviously that's a failure of it. He didn't manage to seize power. Instead, he found himself in prison. So those are some fairly maybe obvious failures. So let's try and turn this into some writing, shall we? So let's make our first point. So one way the Beer Hall Putsch was a failure was, and give an opening argument. So pause me now and give your opening argument. So what I've gone for is, one way the Beer Hall Putsch was a failure was that Hitler was betrayed, revealing he and his party were not that popular. So now I need to give some evidence. For example, so try and give some facts of the event. Maybe the night where he goes into the beer hall, has to force people into it. People then betray him when he goes off to try and seize control of Munich. Name some people, name some events. Try and write a couple of sentences of evidence and story. Pause me now and give it a go. Okay, so I've gone for example, Hitler had forced Kahr and the other nationalists to join his rebellion. Obviously, he took them to a side room, didn't he? And he almost had a gun to their heads to threaten them to join him. But once Hitler and the Nazis left to take over Munich, after the meeting, Kahr betrayed him. He called the local police and army to stop the Nazis, and obviously they were stopped in the street and shot at, and they ran away. If you want to add that in much more detail, you can do. Let's make another point then, shall we? So we start off then with another way the Beer Hall Putsch was a failure was, we need to give another way it failed. Okay, so think about the next bit of the story in this, and maybe think about a way in which it failed. Pause now and give it a go. So, as I've said, another way that the Beer Hall Putsch was a failure was that Hitler was arrested and the Nazis were banned. So now let's give some evidence for this. So, for example, and again, think about the story of events, what happens, and the consequences of the Beer Hall Putsch maybe for the Nazis, and give some evidence. Pause me now and write a couple of sentences about it. Okay, so I said, for example, Hitler went on trial and subsequently found guilty and sent to prison. Added to this, the Nazi Party were banned and were not allowed to stand in the 1924 election. They were renamed the National Socialist Freedom Movement, and they did get some seats, of course, but they were banned. You could add to that, of course, that Hitler was banned from speaking in public when he was released from prison as well, which obviously negatively impacted them. Okay, if you want to try another question around the early Nazis, have a look at this question. Describe two features of the early Nazis before 1929. Or you could think about two features of them between 1924 and 1929, maybe their democratic nature. If you're going to do before 1929, I suggest one point could be about how they were aggressive and tried to seize power, but then from 1924 onwards, they were democratic in their way of seizing powers, perhaps. Or you could talk about their beliefs, anti-Semitism, race, nationalism, anti-communist. You could talk about any of those ideas to give you a good answer. Okay, well, I hope that was useful and you've managed to recap your knowledge of the early Nazis and practice a question. So if it is useful, then have a look at my revision guide. I've got lots of them. Have a look at my revision guide page and also have a look around my YouTube channel. Lots and lots of other videos to help you. So hopefully subscribe, recommend me to your friends. Right, bye bye for now.